Well, thank you for joining us again for another 360 Timmy. And this week we're in Victoria Park in Ashford, Kent. And my guest is Sam Bynes.
Hello.
And welcome, Sam. Sam, the story is, I guess, Essex to London, London to Kent, and you're an entrepreneur
Yeah.
and part of the gig economy, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's been fun.
So tell us about your background then. Tell us about your journey. What have you done?
So I started off. I started off in tennis actually, and actually that's a self-employed job. So you have to find all the work for yourself, and obviously one of the downsides to it is you only work over summer because Wimbledon's on.
So this is tennis training.
Yeah, tennis training.
Tennis
yeah,
coach. Sorry,
tennis coach. Yeah, it's and obviously from there I changed completely into software because it's that's the path you take in life, you know. So yeah, I retrained, went off to uni, decided that's the best thing to do with my time, and went into software. Yeah, so now I do software consulting and stuff like that for larger companies. But we did all sorts. I worked for IBM for a bit, obviously.
A big player then.
A big player, yeah. Got into there, and that sort of led me down my journey into, well, I can probably do this myself, and there we have it. That's kind of how my life story went. It's quite a quick version of it, I guess.
Yeah.
But
well, so let's expand that a bit then. So what sort of software do you actually write?
So I work mainly in sort of the new cloud technology. So we do a lot of things like there's a new area of software development that's come around called DevOps, and I do loads of that work. And it's basically whenever you're working in cloud, you have these different big players like Azure, AWS, and so on. And yeah, we basically create templates and I don't know how to put it. I guess we create architectures that multiple people can use, and then we sell that pretty much. It's good money. It's been it's obviously got me my house, and it's got me loads of other things. It's got me onto the market, so it's been a good journey, I think. Yeah.
And what sort of clients do you work with then?
We work with all sorts of clients. Some of my clients obviously I can't name, but we do a lot with government, and we also do a lot with a lot of small companies usually, and we also do it with some of the larger companies as well. So we're not really, I guess, biased. Everybody needs cloud technology nowadays, so we do all sorts of stuff with really any client that really needs our help, and we come in usually to basically get them on track with their cloud journey, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It's good.
So and what part of that's unique then that you're working on? So as opposed to getting someone like IBM,
I think
what's your USP?
I think the unique side of it is that there's not enough skilled people in cloud, and because it's such a new technology, all of the really skilled people tend to be in the smaller companies, and this leads larger companies like IBM to tend to buy up all the smaller companies to obviously get the talent.
Yeah.
But that's what I found in this industry is actually a lot of the smaller guys tend to have a lot more really good developers, and a lot of the time that's how these larger corporations work. Is they tend to find the smaller companies that are doing something really, really well, and then they try and take that USP off of them in some way. So there's nothing really unique about what I do, but I think it's like everything. There's the uniqueness comes from if you're good at it and you provide some value, then people keep coming back, you know.
Yeah.
So
and you do get a lot of repeat business.
Oh yeah, most of my business is repeat business, and it's one of those things where people think it's going to be like a 6-month job and you're done. A lot of the time it's 6 months and then support.
Yeah.
So you end up having to support infrastructure for a long time, and people constantly change their infrastructure. So I would say once every 5 years, you get new infrastructure coming through, especially in the cloud game. So you have these 5-year contracts, and usually it's you'll be with AWS or Azure for 5 years, and then you want to move to whatever the best deal is, and so on.
And how does it work? So you have employees, you have developers that work for you?
Yeah.
But you don't have premises here in Ashford?
No, I don't have
so
premises.
You're literally 100% virtual?
All remote, yeah. We stayed with remote working as soon as we could really.
Yeah.
because we're quite a new business, we came through on COVID, and we realised that you can pretty much do all of this stuff online, right? I mean, the cloud itself is, the whole point of it is to be not having data centers, and really that's what AWS and Azure and all these people have started doing, is they've made it so you don't need to have these big data centers where people need to go and work. Now you can do all of it by going through their services, right? So that's what we did with ours, really, is we stayed remote as well, because why do we need to have an office when you can literally do most of this stuff on your computer from your house?
Yeah.
The only exception to that is sometimes in government you need to be in specific buildings. So there is that case, but
Yeah.
but that's such an exception that you only have to do it when you need to, right? So
Yeah. So you're doing work with kind of protective marking, that kind of side of government as well. So I guess it's for that, is it?
Yeah, and a lot of the time with stuff like this is you have all security in place, and there's so much around it that there's stuff that sometimes you can't even do because it's so secure, right? So it's one of those things where with government you could still probably do most of it online, but it's realistically a lot of the systems are offline, so you can't really access them.
So how many people do you have working for your company?
Well, it varies really, because that's part of the structure of my company. We've at one point we had like around 54 people.
Yeah.
Right now we have about 13, but that's just because we have less jobs at the moment. So we vary it really depending on.
But you can flex and contract as you need to. That's good. And what are they contractors or?
Most of those are contractors. Yeah. Like everything we do usually works with contractors, because with a contractor you can, like, especially nowadays, they get the benefit by contracting their own work. I get the benefit of having a more flexible workforce. So for me, it's actually a really good thing. But for, let's say, a larger company where you could maintain the workforce, that would be something like IBM, for example. They can maintain a really large workforce, and they have these concepts of like the bench, so they can keep people around. I'm a smaller company, so I can't really have a bench because I would bleed money. So.
Yeah. And presumably when you were at IBM, you were on that bench, were you, before, and you know what that's like, and how they work with contracts, or were you the star player?
Unfortunately, I wanted to be on the bench.
Yeah. Oh, I see.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay. Yep.
And unfortunately, from day one, I was working and billable. So yeah. But I tried to stay on the bench if I could, but I never really got to see it. So it's one of those. But I mean, to be honest, I can't imagine that being a good experience. Like if you're a developer or anybody who goes into a big company, sitting on a bench and not being used, I can't imagine that's what people want to do.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's a similar situation where you work, but I would always imagine you want all your staff being useful, right? So,
yeah, absolutely.
And if you're a member of staff, you probably want to contribute as well, right?
Yeah.
So
how spread out are your staff then across the country? I mean, or is it across Europe?
Across Europe.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So we basically work with all sorts of different people. Usually, if it's government related, it has to be UK, workers only. I've got quite a few UK workers, and most of it actually is UK workers because we do most of our work with government. But there is workers that I've worked with people from like Russia a lot, and obviously like Ukraine area. But things have obviously changed quite a bit over there recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all different kinds of workers. There's guys from Poland as well. So I tend to find those countries tend to have the best developers as well.
So any particular challenges with that kind of working?
I think the hardest part about working remotely is you have to have a lot of trust in your employees, and that's the same with anything. Is it like if you work remotely, you have to make sure. I've had situations where I've paid somebody for a job and the job's not been done, and I've had to then sort of spread myself thin in order to get the job done. And sometimes I've lost work because of it. But I mean, that's part of business, right? Is you try to get as much of your, like you try to get the best employees you can, and then you try to support them if you can. But you've got to be prepared that everybody moves on, right? So it is one of those things. But some of those jobs I think are the better jobs because you learn a lot more from it. So it is good, right?
So about your relocation to Ashford. So you're originally from Essex.
Yep.
Grew up there.
Yeah.
And then I guess you lived in London for a period to work in places like IBM.
Yeah. So I lived in London for a while. I lived there just because that's where, like, you had back before COVID and even before that, you had London. If you're not really in the middle of it, and if you're working there all the time, you have to kind of be by your offices. And I moved into London, didn't really like the rent prices, and I didn't really like the atmosphere really there. So I decided to move somewhere out into like to Kent or Essex again. But I came to Kent and moved into Ashford because of it.
And was there a particular reason why it was Ashford, or was that just
There was
luck kind of thing?
well, it was mainly the house.
Mainly the house, yeah.
So I got told by my partner that literally
The boss. That's the real boss.
Yeah,
then.
the real boss.
Yeah.
I'm not actually the boss. She's the real boss. But yeah, she found this house. She liked it. There's shopping close by.
Yeah.
You've got everything you really need in Ashford. You've got the train. You can get into London really quick. So you've still got everything there. It's just like you're not in London. So you have more of that like outside space like we see like now and stuff. So it's quite nice, you know, because you can actually just go to a park or something. In London, you do have the parks, but
you got this on your doorstep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this is on my doorstep now.
So when did you move down after COVID or during COVID, or was that
during COVID?
During COVID, okay.
Yeah. So we moved down about 2.5 years ago now, I think. So it was just sort of towards the end of COVID. But we were quite lucky. We moved out and we obviously had our flat, so we could move out over a couple of months.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so bad. And yeah, it was one of those things where we've been quite lucky with everything. It's, as I said, getting on the ladder and things like that. Nowadays, everybody says it's impossible to do, but
yeah,
it's. I think there's a lot of good houses around, so if you can buy them, then that's good.
Well, I mean, it sounds amazing. COVID's an opportunity for everyone, wasn't it? It just changed the way everyone works, remote working. So you've started a new business, you've moved. So what does the future hold for you? I mean, I said you're an entrepreneur as well. You're always, when I talk to you, you're always thinking up other ideas.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit more about that. Well, not necessarily the ideas, but some of the thought processes you go through and what you'd like to do.
What I sometimes do is I create a lot of software on the side. And this is because I see in my industry all the time how many like flaws and issues there are, and like everything's sort of built on like, I don't know. It's the same as everything, like infrastructure. It's built upon and then thought about later.
Yeah.
And it's the same with software. There's always a good bit of software that you can come along, and if you can think about an idea, and if you can actually start implementing it, then you can usually get like a good like product built, and you can create a real company out of that. So I do a lot of these softwares on the side just because I think that's where more money is going to be in the future. If you can get something that's like permanent, with software consulting, you're always selling. With like software, you sell once, and then if they like your software, they keep coming back. So it's a permanent structure, right? So in that way, it would allow me to keep staff on more. So I could actually create that whole bench structure. But I don't think you can do that if you just have a software consulting business, because then you're going to always be like, you always need everybody making you money.
Yeah.
So it's a much more, well, it's a consultant lifestyle, isn't it? Yeah. So, but yeah, I think with thinking about coming up with ideas, I think most ideas are pretty, I tend to find there's lots of good ideas that people haven't done yet. And it's usually because they just, like, I hear people say it all the time. It's like, oh yeah, but somebody's probably already done that. And it's like, even if somebody's already done it, doesn't mean they've done it well. And there's all these other, like, I come across a lot of different software, and whenever I come across software, because I'm a consultant, I come across it when it's at its worst state. And usually there's a deadline that they've got to hit, and a lot of that bad state gets left in.
Yeah.
And this is why I started doing more software, is because if you can build something from scratch and you build it well, then, you know, it's like you're going to end up with a good piece of kit, and people will keep coming to you. So yeah, that's the main like reason I do stuff like that. And I kind of thrive in those environments as well, you know. So like coming up with a business, it's a sort of environment where I don't know how to describe it. It's like if you're somebody who wants to work for themselves, you've always got to be thinking about the next thing.
Yeah, well, innovating, I guess. Changing your approach to stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you always stay the same, well, you're unfortunately always going to end up like the market kicks you out if you stay the same.
So you have to pivot all the time.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that's what they always tell you, isn't it?
Yeah,
growth mindset and pivoting. Yeah.
So where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years' time then? Classic question, maybe personally and professionally, with what you're doing right now.
I think where I see myself in a couple of years is probably still in Ashford, obviously.
Yeah.
But no, it's I do see myself probably creating a piece of software at some point that maybe will be more of my focus. I've actually started a piece now around cloud technologies, and what that does is it helps you move, as I said about earlier, like you get these 5-year contracts and then sometimes you have to move cloud providers. Well, that's a large, costly piece of work. And I've been building software recently that allows you to move between some of the bigger cloud providers, and basically creates a standard template which will allow you to move between all of these cloud providers or even use all 3. And that's where my sort of...
that's good, I like that.
Yeah, that's what it's about, isn't it? You've got to try and make it more accessible to people.
Yeah, because once you commit to some of these cloud providers, everything's integrated. It's really difficult to get it. It's like planting a tree, isn't it? The roots spread out and take root, and it's very difficult to transplant that tree once it's grown. But with your approach, then, what you're saying is the tree could have roots into different cloud providers, or you could just literally transplant it to a completely different one without any impact on the thing that it's running.
And the idea is quite simple, because really all you really need to think about is separating the application layer and the actual infrastructure itself. So if you create a platform because a lot of this stuff runs on virtual machines now, and there's things like Kubernetes and all these other cool technologies out there which actually work across cloud providers. So if you can create a containerized solution and you help everybody move towards that containerized solution, you can then move everybody across cloud, and it becomes much less costly at that point.
Yeah, that's going to be a good thing, because cloud is actually is sometimes a lot more expensive, isn't it, than on-premises hosting and that kind of thing.
I think this is the funny thing about my industry is it's always changing, and I've noticed that there was a big push towards cloud, and now there's a big push towards hybrid. So you have cloud and then you have your own data center still, which kind of defeats the purpose in some way. But it means that everybody's always going back and forth with technology. They say this is the best approach and this is the best approach, and I think really we're all just trying to sell. That's what it seems to be. So yeah, I see myself in 5 years probably doing a similar thing, but maybe more around that software.
Yeah.
There's that window, nice and good.
Oh yeah.
See, perfect from the outside. Yeah.
Nice view from here as well.
Yeah.
Well, Sam, thank you very much. It's been a great chat. I've enjoyed talking to you. And anything you want to advertise while we're on here, or?
Not really. I guess I've advertised my software a little bit there, so everybody's obviously going to try and buy it off me now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but great talking to you. Have a great day, and thank you very much, everyone.